Okay, welcome to another interview on herviewphotography.com. This is Darlene, and this morning, well, it's morning where I am. It might not be morning where you are, depending on where you're watching this. I have a street photographer from France originally with me today. Her name is Valerie Jardin, and I'm really happy to have her here because I'm really excited about some of the images she's doing and where she gets to photograph. So welcome, Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
So let's start by telling me a little bit about your background. I know you came from France and you moved to the U.S. several years ago. So how did you get started in photography? Was that something you grew up with, or did you get into it after you came to the U.S.?
It came after I moved here, several years after I moved here. I've been here a little over 20 years, and I picked up my first serious camera about 15 years ago. And just started photographing mostly landscape because I'm in Minnesota and we have a lot of open spaces, and I like minimalist photography for landscape. So got plenty of that since it's pretty much flat, and so I started doing that a lot. Then I moved into portraiture for friends, and then started my photography business that way. So I did portraiture for a few years, and I got kind of bored with it, and moved into interior photography and food photography, which seems like it was a big step, but in between I did a lot of studio work and photographed a lot of products in studio and so forth. So it kind of was a gradual thing, and slowly focused into writing about photography and teaching, and that's pretty much what I do now is run workshops, and I write a lot about photography for, I write magazines. I'm actually writing a book now too, so yeah, my goal now is to be more in the education part of photography than the commercial shooting part of it, but I still work locally for clients.
We have a lot of similarities. I went backwards to that. I started with commercial and food and then went into portrait and wedding. So we just did it backwards.
Yes, yes.
And now we're both teaching. And I love your shirt. Tell me about the shirt you have on.
Thank you, Photography Addict. It's a little online store I have, and I designed a few shirts. So mostly for me, but I opened it to the public just in case.
Very cool. Yeah, there's some neat things. So you mentioned that you're doing a lot of teaching, and I know we both write for Digital Photography School, which is how we met, because you interviewed me, and I decided to check you out, and liked what I saw on your work and your website. So how did you get into, from sort of the commercial aspect, how did you decide, okay, I'm going to teach? Was it something that was presented to you, or how did you move that direction?
Well, I think it's, for a lot of photographers, it's kind of a natural thing. I see a lot of colleagues who shoot for a living and then start teaching workshops. I think we learn so much, and we have so much to give, that and we all start writing about it, so people learn from our mistakes and from our experience, and then teaching, kind of a natural progression too, leading photo walks, and I felt like I had a lot to offer from all those years of experience behind the camera to new photographers and some photographers who've been doing this for a long time, but kind of want a different perspective, and so my workshops are not about the technical aspect of photography. It's really about learning to see, and there is a big focus on street photography for travel photography, but it's also about telling a story, in a frame or in a series of images, and thinking outside the postcard, mostly when people are traveling. So when I teach workshops abroad, there are people who sometimes have been to those countries, but they're passionate about photography, so first they want to spend the week with other photographers. I mean, there is no better way to spend your vacation, I think. And then they want to see that I teach in Paris, for example, so they want to see Paris through their lens and not as a tourist. So, and then when I teach workshops, even here locally, it's really teaching people how to tell a story and to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, so that when they go on a photo walk in their town that they've photographed hundreds of times, they can still get excited about it and leave the house with their camera and as if they were going on a treasure hunt. And I think that's important because we all go through that rut where, you know, oh, I've done this so many times, I can't afford to go to Paris or London, and I'm in a rut. And I've been through it. Everybody goes through that. And I think you need to push yourself and get out of your comfort zone and start seeing things in a new way, in a fresh way. And you can do that in your own backyard. Whether you start photographing, I mean, literally in your own backyard, if you pick up micro photography, for example, or if you do street photography, there is something at every corner that's going to be different every minute of the day. And there is a story to tell. There is always a story to tell. That's no matter where you are.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad that you said, you know, go out in your own city, because I lead a lot of photo walks here locally, and I've become involved with the Drink and Click group as well, and I'm leading some of those events here. And I'm always encouraging people to go out and shoot, and that whole, you know, oh, the grass is greener in my neighbor's yard. You need to get out, like you said, in your own yard and see what's there in a different light. One of the things I tell people to do is lock yourself in your bathroom and don't come out till you have 100 pictures, and it's going to force you to think and see a little differently, to come out with something totally different.
That's true, and it may be surprising, but people who live in Paris would love to be in Minnesota and shoot, you know, and people who are in Minnesota have a hard time imagining that, and would much rather be in Paris. So it's true, people always think the grass is greener, but we all live in a unique place that's exotic for somebody else. So we have to look at it that way, I think, a bit more. Just like we always wish for warmer weather, and I was actually on my Facebook page talking about that. We always wish for spring or summer. It's like, why can't we just enjoy the moment and not always wish to be getting older? Enjoy today.
Well, actually, that's a good segue. So enjoying the moment, you know, one of famous photographers from your country, right? I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, coined the phrase, the decisive moment. Now, of course, that's Cartier-Bresson. Was he influential in your style, or like, who are some of your icons in photography?
Definitely, I love his work. I recently discovered the work of Vivian Maier along with everybody else too, and there's so many photographers that are not as well known that I admire, and I look at other photographers' work all the time for inspiration. I think we all develop our own style, because style is really a combination of your technical ability and your background and your life. So everything that's happened in your life until now will influence your style, so that evolves all the time. And I never try to imitate someone. I get inspiration, and I mean, you can't imitate the style of Cartier-Bresson. First of all, we don't live in the same era, so you know, things are going to be very different. But when I'm out shooting street photography, I do take my time. I'm not a machine gun shooter in the way that I don't shoot thousands of pictures a day. I take my time. I really shoot more than 1 or 2 frames of any subject, because I don't think I think it's rude to be just, because I get close to people. I'm not hiding behind a telephoto lens either. I'm usually shooting with a 50 or 40, so I'm really close to people. So I'm not going to be standing there with my, you know, clicking away. You have to anticipate the moment, and then you only have one shot at it. And I look for that gesture, that special expression or gesture. I think it's all about gesture.
Mm-hmm.
And you're only going to have one shot at it. So if you spend the time, take the time to observe and anticipate the next move, and you're ready, you have a better chance at getting that shot than if you just have the machine gun approach and just shoot, and cross your fingers that you can have one good shot in there. I think I think that you need to be respectful of your subject. That's number one.
So do you have any, while we're just chatting here, because I'm sure it's more interesting for people to look at some photos, do you have any photos you can screen share while we're chatting away and talk about some of your images? But that also leads me into a question about your approach. So you mentioned that you don't use the big long zoom lens and try and shoot from afar. You're getting fairly close to people. One of the questions that I get a lot in my travel class when we're talking about street photography and photographing people in other places like what you do is it okay to do that? Is it okay to photograph somebody, and when is it not okay? What is your philosophies on those things?
In most countries, I mean, in most countries, it's okay to photograph strangers in the street as long as they're in a public place. You can't just go over somebody's fence and they're in their backyard and photograph them. They're in their private property. That's illegal in most countries. In France or in the United States, you can photograph people in a public place for editorial purposes, which means you're not going to use that picture to sell a product. It's not going to be a stock image. It's for editorial. Just like your picture could be in the front page of the local newspaper tomorrow. They're never going to ask if they can put it there. They don't have to. You were in a public place. They took your picture eating a hot dog at the fair. You could be in the front page of the paper. That's editorial. They're not trying to sell a product with it. It's in a newspaper. So street photography is the same way. I don't need a model release from my subject as long as I'm not going to make money from I'm not going to use this picture to sell a product. Now, I could sell it as fine art, and that's okay. That is different. But then again, some countries have different laws, so you really should check before you start putting pictures on social media and so forth. I always make it a rule, and I teach my students that, to really respect the subject and not photograph people in embarrassing situation or vulnerable situation. We're not doing photojournalism, we're street photographers. So I avoid photographing people begging in the street, or just because I want to be respectful of that. That said, when people often ask, well, how do you get started? I'm so nervous. And some street photographers will say, oh, don't photograph street performers. That's too boring. That's easy. Well, I don't think that. I think it's a good way to get started. They're there to be seen. They're usually okay to be photographed. And it's a good place to start for a street photographer. I usually tell my students, well, if you're photographing somebody playing the accordion in Paris on a park bench and they have a box for money, give them €1 or €2. That's the least you can do. But it's a good place to start. Also to start photographing people in events, because you will be less noticed in a crowd. So that's a good place to start also. But then again, you don't need permission as long as it's a public place.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask that because that's a question that I get a lot as well, is for somebody who is a timid photographer, like just starting out, or they're shy, they're afraid to, photograph somebody that they're going to, be unhappy or something. What do you suggest to kind of get them okay with shooting on the street?
Well, there are different ways to approach street photography. You could do completely candid, or you can do a street portrait. They're both two different things, but they still qualify as street photography. So in the candid situation, there is no eye contact with your subject. Your subject doesn't know you're there. But sometimes after you take the picture, they notice you. So smile. I mean, the smile can go a long way. And point your camera. And be ready to tell them what you're doing. Don't run away. I think that's the worst thing people can do is steal the shot and then leave. If the person sees you, smile, and if you think they actually want to interact with you, interact with them. Tell them why you photographed them. They were obviously interesting, otherwise you wouldn't have even looked at them. So it's a good it's good to always respect that. There is also street portraits where you actually have an interaction with your subject, and oh, you should go into fine art if you want to look at samples of street photography. Sorry.
Okay.
And then up there, street photography. So street portraits, sorry, got distracted, is when you interact with your subject and you ask them to make a portrait of them.
Okay.
So for some people that's easier because then they have the okay. For others that's even more intimidating because you're actually asking a stranger to to take a picture of them. So you have to explain why. And it's very addicting, and I always tell people just practice without your camera even. Just compliment people at the bus stop or whatever. And then when you're out with your camera, it will be a lot easier. So talk with people, say, oh, you have such a nice hat. Do you mind if I take a picture? And once they're okay with it, take your time because you owe them that much. I do that often. You always have that little bit of you're always a little nervous. I don't think you ever get over that, but it's also very exciting, and I like interacting with people all the time. So for me, it's kind of a natural thing. For some people, it's very, very intimidating.
Yes,
These
very
are all
uncomfortable.
shots. Sorry, these are all shots that were done when people never knew I took their pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So those are totally candid. I don't. You know, a few of them, I may have had an interaction with them after I took the picture because they saw me, and then usually I show them the back of my camera and I tell them, you know, oh, I just thought this was such a moving moment, or you look so interesting, or you were having, you know, it seemed like there was a story and I wanted to capture it, and most people are pleased. I mean, I'd be happy if somebody told me, oh, I took your picture because I thought you looked really interesting.
Right.
So it's always a compliment, and I think you should let people know that. And occasionally, you know, people will ask, oh, could I have a copy of the picture? And I usually hand them my card and tell them, you know, contact
Now I
me.
noticed this photo of this little boy here, and that's kind of another issue that comes off often with, you know, photography of children. Now that I think that for you and I as women, we can probably get away with a bit more. I know that there's a lot of men photographers that I know, friends of mine, that say, you know, they could not take that same shot without the mom coming over and slapping them. Do you feel that's the case?
Well, I'm a mom too, so I'm very careful with that. I like to get the okay from the parent if the parent is present, and it doesn't mean like I'm going to go to them and ask them, oh, is it, you know, can I take a picture of your child? Because then you ruin the moment. The child will
Sure.
obviously
Right.
notice you and so forth. If I see the parent sitting on a park bench while the child is playing like this little boy with the pigeons in Amsterdam, then I will point my camera and kind of and ask with just, you know, a facial expression if I can take the camera, and then they'll give me the okay. Same way, they'll either smile or nod. If they say no, or if they show no with their finger like this, I just, you know, I totally respect that. I would never photograph a child if the parent felt uncomfortable with it. If the parent is not present and I feel like there is this precious moment that I want to capture, then I'll use my best judgment. And I'm never photographing somebody in an embarrassing situation, or so I feel it's a beautiful moment. I'm not doing anything wrong. The child is in a public place. Then it's on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. So I notice, I do notice that you're in fairly close to a lot of your subjects. What is sort of your favorite lens to use, and how tight are you into these people?
Depends. If I'm out just for street photography, then I'll use usually my new favorite lens is actually the 40mm pancake lens with Canon.
Okay.
So I'm fairly close. A 50mm also. Some of them were shot with the 50. If I'm out shooting all day and I want to do other photography besides street photography, if I want to do some architectural shots, or I usually will put on the 24-70.
Okay.
That way it gives me a wider angle.
And that's on, you have a full frame camera, yes?
Yes, I shoot with a 5D Mark II. I
Okay.
never bring an extra lens. That's one of the things I like to travel light. I usually just have my one camera, one lens for the day. So I'll make the
Okay.
decision in the morning. This was shot with a 50, so I'm fairly close.
That's something that I tell my students as well is, it's become um, the generation and the standard has become zoom lenses for everything. And, they want a 28 to 6,000 to cover everything.
Yeah.
And I say, well, just stick on a 50. And a question I had in my class the other day was, what do I do? I have a 50. What do I do with it? And I was like, you take great photos with it, is what you do with it.
I
And
think that,
you zoom with your feet.
yep. I think I've written articles about the power of limitations, and I think, having just the 50 millimeter or a fixed focal length lens in general will make you a better photographer. I really believe that you will learn more than if you have I don't know, a 24 to 300.
Right.
I mean, yes, of course, if you're traveling, I can see the advantage of having one lens fits all. If you want
Right.
to travel light, but to go on local photo walks, I usually just, have my 40 millimeter on, and whatever I want to shoot that day is going to have to I'm going to have to shoot it with that lens.
Right. Now, there's a lot of sort of popularity in the smaller cameras now, like the 4/3 and the mirrorless. Do you think there's any merit in those for street photography because they're less obtrusive?
Definitely, and that's my next purchase actually. I'd like to get a smaller camera. Maybe this year yet. It's just like learning a
Yeah.
whole new system. When you have
Yeah,
everything,
me too.
learning a whole new system, and when right now I can be out with my 5D Mark II, I don't even have to look at the dials. I know exactly what I need to do.
Right.
And, yeah.
I
So
mean, I think back to, go back to Cartier-Bresson. I mean, he was using, things like a Leica and a small lens and
mhm.
um, manual focus, and people with digital cameras and autofocus, they can't fathom the idea of, manually focusing and using one lens and, not even having a viewfinder to see properly through the lens, and they had these amazing images.
Oh, exactly. I mean, everything. I mean, our phones are better than cameras from 10 years ago. So people put way too much emphasis on the equipment. I think they should just get out more and shoot with what they have.
Is
I
that
think
something that
people
you
tend to.
focus on in your workshops as well, as sort of the simplicity of gearing down?
Definitely, I always tell people, you don't upgrade until you've used what you have to its full potential. And I see so many people with gear lust who
Yeah,
have the need to get the latest models, just like they do with cars. And if it works, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And
exactly.
if you're comfortable with your gear, like I always tell people coming into my workshop, don't get a new camera before you come to Paris for a week on that workshop,
Right.
because you need to be very familiar with your equipment. You don't want the camera to come in the way.
Right. Just like don't go buy a new pair of hiking shoes before you go and, do the Inca Trail or something.
That's true. It's one of the suggestions too. And my workshops, don't wear brand new shoes on day one because we're going to be walking.
Yeah. And I think I'm super, attracted to your images because I mean, number one, I need to go to Paris in a big way. It's something that's drawn me for years, and I just haven't managed to get there yet. And we were in Barcelona a couple of years ago, and we drove up the coast, and we just popped into the corner of France and just saw a little bit of it. And the taste that I got in these little mountain towns makes me want more. Can you tell me a little bit about some of your workshops? Like you do one in Paris and one in Normandy, correct?
Yes, I'm from Normandy, so I started this new workshop this year, actually, the 1 week long Normandy workshop. Paris, as well as Normandy, are all inclusive workshops. So we stay in luxury accommodations. It includes gourmet dinners for 6 days of the workshop. It includes the instruction. We go on photo walks. There is some classroom time. Mostly the classroom will be in the field, because you're not in Paris for a week to spend half the day in an actual classroom. So
Right.
most of the teaching is done during the photo walks. Then we, of course, have some post-processing time and critique time in the classroom. But so Paris, we stay in one location in the Fifth, which is the heart of Paris, just near the Luxembourg Garden and the Panthéon. And from there we go on daily walks in some areas that are not so touristy. One of the days we actually spend the half a day at Le Père Lachaise famous cemetery, which is just a beautiful place to visit and photograph any time of the year. And the Normandy workshop is a little different because we move almost every day. We cover a larger geographical area. So we start in a coastal town of Honfleur. Then I have a taxi service that can take a small group that takes us to our next hotel and so forth. We spend 3 nights in a 18th century chateau in the middle of the week as base camp.
Oh.
Then we spend a day touring World War II, the key landing area of D-Day, which is a moving experience whether you're a World War history buff or not. We also spend 1 night in the island of Mont Saint-Michel at the edge of Brittany. It dates back to the year 800. It's an abbey on an island, and we actually do spend the night, 1 night there, which is an amazing experience because it's quite small and it's filled with tourists during the day. I think it's the second most visited place in France after the Eiffel Tower, and but everybody leaves at night. And it takes a little while for tourists to come in the morning. So my participants of the workshop have the opportunity to see it after the tourists are gone, during the best time of the day to shoot, and then early in the morning again. So
nice.
It's quite a treat.
A few pictures back, there was a fellow on, looks like a street vendor, and he was selling a bunch of old film cameras, and that one made me smile.
Yes.
Made me smile. Awesome. I mean, just looking at all these photos, I don't know about the people watching, but it makes me want to go and join you and, just tuck into your suitcase and come along with you because it's so appealing. And I think, like, it goes back to that, it's just different than what we have in our backyard. So, I mean, do you have any other tips for, short trips if you can't make it to Paris or Normandy? What else can you do?
People should just leave the house with a theme in mind. Whether they're going to be out shooting street photography, they're going to focus on people and their dogs or people with hats or something. Doesn't mean they're going to miss something else that comes along the way, but if they actually leave the house with a theme in mind, they're going to stay focused. It's going to be more fun, and it could just be. And it doesn't have to be street photography. You could leave the house with a theme of a color in mind. For example, I'm going to photograph things that are red today. And of course, if something really cool happens in front of you, you can shoot that too. But having that theme will keep you focused and will keep your photo walk much more interesting. And I do that all the time. I think it's fun. Also, work on a special project. Do a longer project, such as interview people at a shelter, take pictures, like at an animal shelter, for example, follow somebody, a family who just adopted a dog, and then follow up with them later and see if you can do like an environmental portrait project of that family in their environment with their new pet. Just work on project that can take an hour, can take a few weeks or a few days, whatever, but just be creative and get out of your comfort zone. If you don't photograph street photography, if you don't do street photography, go and try it, because that might just be your favorite thing to do after one day. Or if you never photograph flowers, well, go try to shoot flowers for a day, and that's how people find their thing. I photograph everything that moves me, so I'm not a big flower photographer or nature photographer, but I'm moved like everybody else by a beautiful sunrise and this perfect light early in the morning. I love going out in the prairie, and prairie grass is so beautiful on the first frost, for example. And you're there right during the blue hour, and and it's magical. Doesn't matter who it is, I'm sure. I mean, I don't think you should be stuck in one genre of photography. You need to open yourself to a lot of different things, and it will make your life much more exciting as a photographer.
I think even for people who are professionals, like I see so many professionals burn out. I mean, I've been there, and you've probably been there too, where you just get so bogged down with doing work for other people, so paid jobs, and doing it in the manner in which they want it. You need to do something for yourself, and you know, street photography could be it, or like you said, flowers or what have you. And everything that you say, it's great, and I'm smiling because I say all these same things in my class, so I feel like we're two peas in the same pod.
Especially if you're a professional photographer. I mean, personal projects are key to keeping the passion alive. I went through that. I wasn't even taking my camera out on weekends because it had become a job, and I certainly didn't want to be processing images for me when I had to process images for my clients. And I almost quit because of that. And it's not until I started working on personal project, making myself go out every week or several times a week just for me and shoot for my vision only. And then I started sharing online with other people, photographers or non-photographers, that totally can you say that, rekindled the passion. And I've never been more passionate about the craft as I am now. I think you owe it to yourself to go out and shoot for yourself, not trying to please other people, because when you shoot for clients, it's a compromise between their vision and your vision. It's not 100% your vision. When you shoot for yourself, it's 100% your vision. And I think that's why I enjoy teaching so much and teaching workshops, because I'm shooting for myself. I don't deal with commercial clients anymore, and it's the best of both worlds. I couldn't be happier. I'm doing what I love, and I don't have to compromise. So, good.
I think that's why I'm actually considering looking at the 4/3. I'm looking at the Olympus OMD series, because a lot of times, like, I'll show up at family events and everybody expects me to be taking the photos, and exactly what you just said is I have all this client work to do, and I have all these other things that I need to process for, you know, my classes or my website or what have you. I don't want to go to my family event because now it's almost like another job if I take pictures there and I have to process them. So I'm tempted to just, you know, get a point and shoot, or I usually end up taking pictures on my iPhone and video on my iPhone, and just because it's simpler, right? And strip it down to the basics.
Yes, that's true. But it's interesting because, and it's not only about photography. A lot of artists who turn their passion into a profession will go through that same stage of possibly losing the passion because it becomes a job, and you really have to be careful. It's happened to a lot of people. It's happened to me. And I always tell people, just work on personal project, and don't always be so worried about, oh, but are people going to like this picture or not? Shoot for yourself. Not everything you shoot is going to have to be a print that you are going to sell. You have to do things that make you happy, and if you photograph things that make you happy on your personal projects, then I think you'll be able to sustain that passion. So yes, I really think that if you keep working on a personal project, it will keep that passion alive, and I think it will also enhance your confidence as a professional, and also I think you'll be better able to sell yourself and your service as a professional photographer.
And what about somebody on the other side? What about somebody on the other side of the coin who is not a professional, that picks up a camera and says, wow, I really love doing this, I want to do more of this, and so they decide they want to do it as a career? A lot of my students will say things like that to me as well, and sometimes I'll actually encourage them, you know, maybe you don't want to do it as a career, because if it's your passion, keep it your passion. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, and there is nothing wrong with keeping photography as a hobby. It doesn't make you a lesser photographer. A lot of people say, oh, I'm not a professional. It's like, well, doesn't mean your work is not as good as a professional work. Sometimes it's better, and sometimes for that reason, because they don't have that pressure. And it's okay to try to make it as a photographer, and just don't quit your day job. Just work slowly at it. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years to build a reputation, and it's about quality and consistency. So you need to really do something you love. You can't just decide tomorrow you're going to become a wedding photographer, and you may not like it. And that is really a genre of photography that you have to love if you want to make it, because there are so many out there, and you have to be really good to and you have to be good at it to do a good job, and you have to love it to do a good job. That's what I meant to say. It shows in your work. So the love that you put into it will show in the results. So shoot something you really love. If your thing is photographing rock bands, well, go try to do that, and who knows, you may be able to make some money at it. Just go into something you truly love and you're passionate about. And if you feel like it's too much pressure, or because becoming a professional photographer, it's a lot more about selling and marketing than it is about shooting. I would say it's about 80% marketing and 20% shooting. So if your goal is to be behind the camera all day, don't go that route. Just keep it as a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. I see work from photographers who are hobbyist photographer that is outstanding, and they sell their work as print, and there's a lot of satisfaction in that, or they have some exhibits, and so
Totally.
many
I
ways
totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. One last question for you, and I don't want to keep you too long, but I noticed as we're flipping through, I mean, you do a lot of black and white conversions, and so it kind of makes me wonder, did you have your background in film and in shooting black and white? I noticed you keep your processing, fairly simple, like the images are fairly straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't spend much time on in the post-processing. It's not my favorite thing to do. I have the minute rule on each picture. I do process in Lightroom, and I used to shoot film, so I try to get it right in camera. If it takes too much work, it's not worth it. So I try to make my adjustments in camera, so all I have to do is a black and white conversion and adjust a few sliders in Lightroom. Sometimes the subject is all about color, so it's not because it's street photography that it has to be black and white. Sometimes my street photography will stay in color. Mostly black and white because I like the timeless feel of it, and I also like the way that it will remove distracting, colorful elements in a shot.
Well, you mentioned the color, and I instantly thought of the pictures we were looking at. There was a little girl with the umbrella on the stairs, and you had that one in black and white, and then I saw it again later in color. I actually prefer the black and white one because of the simplicity.
Okay. See, but it's so colorful. I don't know. I go back and forth with that one. I didn't realize I had it both ways in the website, but it has sold in black and white a few times, and I don't think it ever sold in color. But for some reason, that one I like in color. But sometimes just doing a black and white conversion will help you focus on the subject and not a distracting element. Like I had this really cool picture of that bicyclist, the gentleman, all dressed up on a bike in Amsterdam, and there were those bright blue garbage cans right next to him. Well, your eye is automatically drawn to the color. And I did a black and white conversion, and your eye is automatically drawn to the main subject instead. So sometimes converting it to black and white is just it's easier than removing something in Photoshop. I don't do that for street photography. I kind of like
magic.
I like to keep my pictures simple.
Yeah. Any last piece of advice for people that either want to try street photography or just in general?
Well, go out and start in your own town and go where it's busy. Don't be afraid to get close, and just be prepared to interact with your subject. If you're shooting candid and they see you, just don't run away like you did something wrong, because you didn't do anything wrong. People have their picture taken all the time. I mean, look in some cities like London, where you're under video surveillance all day long with the cameras throughout the city. So it's okay to photograph people in public places. So don't look like you're doing anything wrong. Be confident, have a smile, and be prepared to talk to them. If they want to know why you took their picture, just tell them why. They looked interesting, obviously. That's why they caught your attention. And most people actually like that. They like a compliment. So I would say that if it's easier, start with an event or photograph street performers. It's a good way to break the ice for somebody who's never photographed a stranger.
So like a festival or something where there's lots of people crowded.
Yes, and then or like a street performer playing the guitar and you know, throw a dollar in there,
Sure.
because that's the least you can do. But it's a good and take your time, do them justice. If you do photograph street portrait where you actually interact with the subject and ask to take their picture, take your time too, because you already ask the permission, so now move them a little bit. Maybe there's a better background, or the light will be better across the street. So once you've already received permission, then do a good job. That's another tip.
So where can people find out more about Valerie?
Well, my website has links to almost everything. So that's Valerie Jardin Photography, all in one word, VALERIEJARDIN Photography. I'm mostly on my Facebook page, and that's also Valerie Jardin Photography. You can Google my name and just Valerie Jardin, and I'll probably pop up a lot of different places. And then I write for digital, for DPS. Sorry, I completely drew a blank. I also write for, I won't be able to think of the name now. I write for a couple different places. So, and all the articles that I write are linked in my publication page on the website. So all my articles for DPS are linked there, as well as podcasts. I'm guest host on TWIP regularly, so I have links to everything. I'm trying to keep up to date.
Well, I'll be joining you there very shortly. Frederick has asked me to be co-host as well, so we'll hopefully be in a couple together.
That sounds good.
So thank you very much for joining us. I know I really enjoyed your images, and I hope that people watching have got a lot. I have got some great tips that we can take forward and get out there on the streets.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.